Today, we delve into a case that unfolded in Xinshui-sheng, Dunhua County, Jilin Province, China, on February 13, 2018, an ominous date that corresponded to December 28th on the Chinese lunar calendar, just 2 days shy of the country's Lunar New Year holiday. The streets were adorned with vibrant red lanterns and festive lights, as the community bustled with shoppers eager to prepare for the celebrations. However, at around 7:30 p.m. that evening, an urgent call pierced the festive atmosphere, coming from a man named Mr. Li Guojun. In a frenzied voice, he reported, "When I got home from work, I found my daughter collapsed in the bathroom. She's not breathing anymore." The police immediately sprang into action, responding to the address provided by Mr. Li. Upon arrival at apartment 102, the crime scene, officers stepped through the threshold of the living room. Opening the door to the right, they were met with a chilling sight. The victim lying on her back on the bathroom floor. Li Xinyang wore a cream-colored quilted jacket, now soaked with blood. Her head faced the door, and her hands lay on her abdomen, as if she had instinctively tried to apply pressure to the fatal wound before succumbing to her injuries. A single deep wound marred her abdomen, a stark reminder of the violence that had abruptly ended her young life. 10 minutes later, the forensic team arrived at the scene, ready to uncover the truth behind the tragedy. While they conducted a preliminary examination to determine the cause of death, the police began gathering more information about the victim. The young woman, identified as Li Xinyang, was only 21 years old. The crime had unfolded within the confines of a newly built residential complex in Dunhua City, Jilin Province. Strikingly, the building was devoid of security cameras, creating an unsettling sense of vulnerability. The apartment, a modest 2-bedroom unit, had been rented 3 years prior by Mr. Li Guojun, the victim's father. Mr. Li and his daughter lived together in this space, which was structured simply. Upon entering, one would step directly into the living room, with the first door on the right leading to the bathroom, a detail that would soon become hauntingly significant. It was here, in the bathroom, that the lifeless body of Li Xinyang was discovered. The room marked with a red circle in the diagram represented her bedroom. At approximately 7:30 p.m. on February 13th, Mr. Li Guojun returned home from work, only to stumble upon the horrific scene. His daughter lay dead on the bathroom floor, a sight that shattered his world. In a state of panic, he called the police without hesitation. Forensic experts, analyzing the condition of the body and the fixed livor mortis, alongside the frigid weather and the victim's warm clothing, estimated that her death had occurred roughly 12 hours prior, likely between 8 o'clock a.m. and 9 o'clock a.m. that fateful morning. With the Lunar New Year fast approaching, the residential complex was teeming with life, as families returned home from distant jobs to prepare for the festivities. The atmosphere was unusually crowded, yet the shadows of tragedy loomed heavy over apartment 102, where Xinyang resided on the first floor. Accessing the unit required climbing a short flight of stairs, with a parking garage situated below. Being the lowest floor, right by the stairwell entrance, it was a thoroughfare for many. How, then, could the perpetrator have executed such a heinous act without drawing the attention of anyone passing by? Beneath the building lay a parking garage, providing easy access to the lowest floor, which was adjacent to the stairwell entrance. This raised a haunting question. How could the perpetrator have committed such a heinous crime without anyone noticing amid the constant flow of foot traffic? On that fateful morning, the air was thick with tension as investigators began their search for witnesses. Inside the dimly lit bedroom of Li Xinyang, the crime scene was being examined with meticulous care. The wardrobe door stood wide open, and a chaotic scatter of women's clothing lay strewn across the floor, a silent testament to the turmoil that had unfolded. The disarray hinted at a desperate search. On the bed, a black nylon mini backpack rested, one strap torn off, its condition screaming of a violent encounter. The bed sheets were a tangle of disorder, and a closer look at the torn strap revealed fresh threads, a clear indication that this destruction was recent. Evidence pointed toward a struggle that had erupted in the bedroom, leading to the backpack being damaged and carelessly tossed onto the bed. Yet, questions loomed large. Why, then, was Li Xinyang's lifeless body discovered in the bathroom? The evidence suggested a burglar might have infiltrated the home, perhaps intending to steal valuables. In a tragic twist, the victim may have interrupted the intruder, resulting in a violent confrontation and ultimately, murder. However, as investigators dug deeper, this theory quickly crumbled under scrutiny. While drawers had been rifled through, there was no sign of forced entry at the door, raising red flags about the nature of the crime. The victim's wallet, cell phone, and other valuables lay untouched, further complicating the narrative. Li Xinyang's father would later affirm that upon thorough inspection, nothing had gone missing from their home. Despite the presence of several high-value items in plain sight, Li Xinyang's backpack, though damaged, remained undisturbed. Its zipper was still closed, and the money inside was untouched. It became evident that the perpetrator had meticulously staged the scene, likely to mislead investigators into believing the motive was robbery. A closer examination of the living room, bathroom, and floor revealed drag marks in several locations. In the far corner of the bathroom floor, a distinct drag mark was evident, suggesting that the victim had been forcefully pulled into that space. The condition of Li Xinyang's body told a harrowing story. It bore wounds inflicted by a sharp object, likely a knife, with one deep stab wound piercing the abdominal artery. Strangely, little blood was found at the location where the body lay. It appeared the crime scene had been staged, perhaps in an attempt to mislead investigators into believing the motive was robbery. A meticulous examination of the living room, bathroom, and surrounding areas revealed disturbing drag marks scattered across the floor. In the bathroom's left corner, a particularly distinct drag mark caught the eye of detectives. This evidence suggested that the victim had been forcibly dragged into the bathroom. Gruesomely, the body bore multiple wounds inflicted by a sharp object, likely a knife, including one deep stab wound that pierced the abdominal artery. Strikingly, the crime scene showed minimal blood, a perplexing detail considering the violence of the assault. From these critical findings, investigators theorized that the bathroom was not the primary crime scene, but rather a secondary location where the victim was moved. They broadened their search, focusing on the victim's bedroom, where they discovered clear signs of an attempted cleanup. It became evident that the perpetrator had made efforts to erase any traces of blood. Additional drag marks were identified leading from the living room, accompanied by the broken strap of a backpack left carelessly on the bed. Police pieced together a chilling narrative, concluding that the victim had been attacked in her bedroom before being dragged away by her legs. The evidence pointed towards a grim scene, indicating that the victim had been dragged from the bedroom into the living room and ultimately into the bathroom. Observations of the apartment building revealed that the ground floor windows were low, made of clear glass, and offered no privacy, further complicating the mystery of the crime. The apartment where the events unfolded held a haunting secret. Any conflict within its walls could easily be observed or heard by passers-by. It was likely that the assailant moved Li Xinyang to the bathroom, the only room without windows, in a desperate attempt to avoid detection during the brutal attack. The curtains were drawn tightly, shielding the grisly scene from the outside world. The meticulous cleaning of the crime scene raised suspicions. It indicated that the perpetrator possessed an intimate knowledge of the apartment's layout, suggesting a person familiar to the victim. Shortly thereafter, forensic evidence emerged, further validating this theory. Li Xinyang's body bore no external injuries or defensive wounds, apart from the fatal stab to her abdomen. This wound, delivered at close range, was inflicted with such force that it nearly buried the blade to the hilt. Such a precise and clean attack implied a direct confrontation, where the assailant seized the element of surprise, striking when Li Xinyang was most vulnerable and unaware. As investigators combed through the apartment building, they stumbled upon a crucial piece of evidence. A resident from the floor above reported a chilling encounter on the morning of the incident. At around 8:52 a.m., while making his way down to the first floor, he passed by the door of apartment 102. As he approached the stairs, he overheard a heated exchange between a man and a woman. The door, closed, obscured the details, but he caught snippets of their conversation. His heart raced as he distinctly heard a woman scream, "Don't pull me!" Her voice was laced with panic and urgency. Following her cry, a man's voice erupted, filled with anger, indicating a fierce argument between the two. This harrowing exchange aligned ominously with the estimated time of Li Xinyang's death, which was determined to be close to 9 a.m. It became increasingly clear that the terrified woman was indeed Li Xinyang. In the wake of these revelations, police turned their attention to the victim's father. During the investigation, Li Guojun was questioned about any possible suspects. He recounted his movements on the fateful day explaining that he had left the house around 6 o'clock a.m. on February 12th for work, remaining there until the evening of February 13th. It wasn't until nearly 2 full days later that he returned home. At first glance, everything appeared normal upon his return. He noticed nothing out of the ordinary as he stored his tools in a room. However, that illusion shattered the moment he opened the bathroom door. There, on the cold floor, lay his daughter, unresponsive and lifeless. When pressed about any potential disagreements Li Xinyang may have had that day, Li Guojun shook his head, unable to conjure a single name. He reflected on his past, revealing that he had divorced early and raised his daughter alone. Over the years, Li Xinyang had become increasingly rebellious, dropping out of school in middle school. Her behavior had spiraled downward, marked by frequent absences and late-night returns, leaving her father in a state of perpetual worry. Li Guojun had made numerous attempts to steer his daughter, Li Xinyang, towards a more stable future. He sought to enroll her in vocational training, hoping to prepare her for a job. However, she consistently resisted his efforts. Instead, she drifted through life, often leaving home for extended periods, returning sporadically, working odd jobs, and embracing a lifestyle that left her father feeling helpless. Despite his unwavering attempts to guide her, she remained elusive, trapped in a cycle of rebellion. In a turbulent chapter of a father's life, Li Guojun faced a heart-wrenching reality. His daughter, Li Xinyang, consistently disregarded his guidance, leaving him feeling powerless. As she distanced herself from home, her silence echoed louder than any words. Her absence was profound. She vanished from his calls and texts, and he remained in the dark about her whereabouts. Occasionally she resurfaced, accompanied by a new boyfriend each time, her circle of friends teeming with troublemakers. As the investigation unfolded, authorities turned their attention toward Xinyang's social connections. Despite her youth, her relationships were tangled and complex, drawing in individuals with troubling pasts. The police narrowed their focus to 2 men who emerged as prime suspects: Kui Jun, her ex-boyfriend, and Shuning, her current partner. In October 2017, just 4 months prior to the tragic murder, Xinyang had ended her relationship with Kui Jun and begun dating Shuning. Further inquiries disclosed that Kui Jun was employed at an auto repair shop in Dunhua City and was nearly a decade older than Xinyang. Their romance had been short-lived. They met in August 2017, spent 2 fleeting months together, and their relationship unraveled by the end of October. The demise of their relationship coincided with a motorcycle accident that left them both injured. The crash resulted in moderate injuries for both, leading to a hospital stay. Kui Jun maintained that he remained unaware of the precise reasons for their breakup, yet he noted a distinct cooling of their bond following the accident, which ultimately culminated in their separation. Recalling the aftermath, Kui Jun's frustration bubbled to the surface. He revealed that while Xinyang sustained only minor injuries requiring minimal treatment, he had suffered more severely and remained hospitalized longer. Their relationship effectively ended during this crucial time. With a bitter tone, Kui Jun reflected on how Xinyang was discharged the very next day after the accident, while he languished in the hospital for several days. Her absence during his recovery cut deep. She neither visited nor inquired about his well-being. His attempts to reach out were met with silence, leaving him feeling abandoned and upset. He lamented that he had covered both their hospital expenses, a fact that seemed to fuel his resentment. This bitterness caught the attention of investigators, who began to speculate that on February 13th, Kui Jun might have confronted Xinyang at her home, potentially over the reimbursement of the medical bills he had paid. Meanwhile, Kui Jun remained hospitalized for several days after the incident. During his recovery, Xinyang did not visit him, nor did she express any concern. When he attempted to reach out, his calls went unanswered, and his messages fell on deaf ears. The silence from Xinyang left Kui Jun feeling deeply unsettled and hurt. In a pivotal moment, Kui Jun recalled that during their hospital stay, a friend of Xinyang's had visited her. This man, who appeared to be in his 40s, would soon become a significant figure in the unfolding drama. He speculated that he may have confronted her about reimbursing him for the medical expenses he had initially covered, a confrontation that could have escalated into conflict. However, investigations revealed that Xinyang's medical expenses were under 1,000 yuan, a small sum largely covered by her insurance. But what prompted Shin Young to abruptly end her relationship with Kui Jun? The answer lay in another man. Kui Jun recalled a visitor during their hospital stay, a friend of Shin Yang's, a man appearing to be in his 40s, who sparked his jealousy and concerns. In a twist of fate, the investigation revealed a man named Shuning, a taxi driver. During a visit, Kui Jun observed a warm interaction between Shin Yang and Shuning. When Kui Jun inquired about the identity of this man, Shin Yang casually referred to him as an old friend, masking the deeper complexities of their relationship. Shin Yang had also mentioned that Shuning was married and had an 8-year-old son. This explanation seemed to put Kui Jun at ease, and he harbored no suspicions at that time. However, after Shin Yang vanished following her discharge from the hospital and with no attempts to contact anyone, a troubling realization struck Kui Jun. He soon discovered that Shin Yang had moved in with Shuning. Alarmed, Kui Jun urged her to return home and abandon her living arrangements with Shuning. This plea fell on deaf ears, leading to a fierce argument between them. Frustrated and worried for her safety, Kui Jun severed all communication with her. As the investigation progressed, authorities learned that Shuning, a 33-year-old taxi driver from Dunhua City, had a history marked by divorce before his relationship with Shin Yang. This revelation stirred suspicions within Kui Jun, who may have felt a sense of betrayal as resentment brewed that could potentially escalate into revenge. Under the relentless pressure of police interrogation, Kui Jun staunchly denied any involvement in the crime. He provided an alibi, asserting that on the morning of February 13th, starting at 7 a.m., he was visiting friends. He recalled sharing breakfast in their home and then engaging in a game of mahjong at a local parlor until well after noon. Through meticulous evidence collection, including surveillance footage depicting Kui Jun entering his friend's apartment complex, police corroborated his story. The footage further showed him arriving at the mahjong parlor, effectively clearing Kui Jun of any suspicion in Shin Yang's murder. With this lead exhausted, investigators turned their focus to Shuning, Shin Yang's current boyfriend at the time of her tragic death. Shuning shared a particularly intimate connection with Shin Yang, allowing him unimpeded access to her home. In fact, Shin Yang spent the majority of her days residing at Shuning's place, returning to her own home only occasionally. Shuning fulfilled her needs, providing food, shelter, and various material comforts. This closeness made him the individual most attuned to her daily habits, her living environment, and the work schedule of her father, Lee Guojun, including the times he would leave and return home. As the investigation deepened, surveillance footage near the apartment complex emerged, revealing that Shin Yang had arrived home at approximately 7 a.m. on February 13th. She was seen exiting a red taxi, a vehicle strikingly similar to the color and model of the car Shuning drove. However, the identity of the taxi driver remained shrouded in mystery, as the low-resolution footage obscured the license plate and the camera angles failed to capture the interior of the complex. The footage depicted the taxi halting at the entrance, with Shin Yang stepping out before the taxi executed a U-turn, possibly either departing or searching for a nearby parking space. Regrettably, no additional footage tracked the vehicle's movements afterward, as the apartment complex lacked perimeter walls or security gates. This series of events painted a complex picture, intertwining relationships and unresolved tensions, setting the stage for a tragedy that would leave an indelible mark on all those involved. With limited camera coverage, investigators found themselves at a standstill. It was impossible to determine if anyone had followed Li Shin Yang that fateful day. However, a deeper dive into her life revealed a close bond with her boyfriend, Shuning. Friends of the couple reminisced about how Shin Yang often spoke fondly of Shuning, particularly how he would cook for her after a long day at work. Described as caring and attentive, their friends believed their relationship was blossoming, with whispers of an impending marriage. The harmony extended beyond their relationship. Shin Yang also shared a warm rapport with Shuning's parents. Yet, with the tragedy now weighing heavily on their minds, the key question loomed. Where was Shuning at the time of the murder? As a taxi driver, he had been on the clock that day from 7 o'clock a.m. to 7 o'clock p.m. Equipped with GPS tracking, his vehicle's records indicated he had driven a customer to a different county that morning, covering over 93 miles. The data clearly placed him far from the scene of the crime, the apartment complex where Shin Yang met her untimely end. Meanwhile, Kui Jun, Shin Yang's ex-boyfriend, was grappling with a heavy heart. Upon hearing of Xin Yang's murder, he was overwhelmed with sorrow and regret. He recounted the circumstances leading to her return home that evening. Their relationship, which had blossomed over a year ago when she first hailed his taxi, had grown from casual conversation and shared interests into something deeper. Although he was aware that Xin Yang was in a relationship with Guijun, their frequent exchanges on WeChat led her to break free from her previous ties. The two began officially dating, and soon they moved in together. Shuning painted a picture of Xin Yang as a nurturing soul. She would often call to check on him if he was late returning home from work. Shuning recalled a conversation where he encouraged her to visit her family for Lunar New Year. "It's already the 28th of the lunar month," he urged. "You should spend the holiday with your father. It's not right to stay here with me during the New Year." Shuning, struggling financially and working through the holiday, feared that Xin Yang would feel isolated if she stayed with him. He had plans of proposing by the end of the following year, and though she was hesitant, he promised to pick her up on the first day of the Lunar New Year. When the news of Xin Yang's murder reached him, a wave of regret washed over Shuning. "If I hadn't urged her to go home for the New Year, maybe she wouldn't have been killed," he lamented. However, police had already ruled him out as a suspect, thanks to the GPS tracking data that confirmed his whereabouts that morning. In a break in the case, investigators were able to identify the taxi driver who had dropped Xin Yang off earlier that day. By tracing the GPS routes from taxis affiliated with Shuning's company, they uncovered that this driver was a close colleague of Shuning. According to this driver, he had indeed dropped Xin Yang off at the Shinshui apartment complex. Shortly after, he received a call from a regular customer. In a bid to reach the customer faster, he opted for a shortcut away from the apartment complex, a route devoid of public cameras. In a moment of reflection, Guijun lamented, "If I hadn't urged her to return home for the New Year, perhaps she wouldn't have met such a tragic fate." However, police, utilizing GPS tracking data from Shuning's taxi route that fateful morning, ruled out any involvement from him. Simultaneously, investigators worked to identify the taxi driver who had dropped Xin Yang off that morning, tracing the routes of taxis within the same company as Shuning's. The driver, it turned out, was a close associate of Shuning. According to the driver, he had dropped Xin Yang off at the Shinshui apartment complex before quickly receiving a call from a regular customer. In a bid to expedite the pickup, he took a shortcut away from the complex, a route devoid of public surveillance cameras. While no additional footage of the taxi driver's vehicle was available, his GPS records provided a crucial timeline. After dropping off Li Xin Yang, he drove approximately 1.2 miles to pick up another passenger, never returning to the vicinity of Shinshui. This evidence effectively ruled him out as a suspect in the investigation. Meanwhile, police scoured the area and obtained footage from a nearby surveillance camera. Positioned around 164 feet from the apartment complex and angled toward the entrance, the camera captured significant moments. In the footage, Li Xin Yang was seen exiting the taxi and walking toward the building, her behavior appearing entirely normal. The timestamp marked 7 o'clock a.m. on February 13th. Moments after she entered the complex, approximately 20 seconds later, Xin Yang was seen rushing out of the building, panic etched across her face. A few seconds later, a man dressed in black was observed chasing her. Xin Yang sprinted only a short distance, just a few meters, before the man seized her. The ensuing struggle took place behind a bus stop, partially obscuring the view. Yet, despite the obstruction, the upper parts of their bodies remained visible, particularly their necks and heads. This footage suggested a familiarity between Xin Yang and her assailant, yet her demeanor indicated she was desperate to evade him. The critical question loomed. Who was this man? Could he be the one responsible for Li Xin Yang's tragic demise? The timestamp on the footage was alarmingly close to the moment a witness reported hearing an altercation within the apartment, and coincided with Xin Yang's estimated time of death. Despite exhaustive reviews, the camera's distance and poor resolution thwarted clear identification of the man's face. In the grainy footage, the upper parts of their bodies, particularly their necks and heads, were visible. This unsettling scene suggested that Xin Yang likely recognized the man, yet her demeanor hinted at a profound reluctance to engage with him. Who was this figure lurking in the shadows? Could he be the one who ended Xin Yang's life? The timestamp of this footage was alarmingly close to the moment a witness reported hearing a violent altercation inside the apartment, coinciding with Xin Yang's estimated time of death. Despite hours of review, the camera's distance and poor resolution obscured the man's identity. However, his build, approximately 5 feet 7 inches with a slender frame, stood out to the investigators. The police noted a striking resemblance to Xin Yang's father, Li Guojun. They swiftly set out to verify Li Guojun's alibi. Previous investigations revealed that he claimed to have left home early on the morning of February 12th. He asserted that he did not return until the evening of February 13th, at which point he discovered his daughter had been brutally murdered. He staunchly insisted that he was away from home during the crime, even when pressed about whether he had returned at any point between leaving for work on February 12th. Upon his return on February 13th, he adamantly denied any wrongdoing, maintaining that he had remained at his workplace the entire time and had no awareness of Xin Yang's return home. Surveillance footage from a store across the street, however, captured Li Guojun near the apartment complex around 10:12 a.m. on February 13th. This evidence clearly indicated that he had returned home, furthermore aligning with the time of Xin Yang's death as determined by forensic experts. If Li Guojun had been present during the murder, why had he not noticed anything amiss? This glaring inconsistency raised suspicions that he was concealing critical information. The police shifted their focus to the complex relationship between Li Guojun and Xin Yang. Investigations revealed a history fraught with significant conflict between father and daughter. Shuning, Xin Yang's boyfriend, recounted how Xin Yang loathed returning home, harboring deep resentment towards her father. He often urged her to sidestep confrontations and to communicate her feelings rather than escalate tensions. Shuning believed their disputes stemmed from generational differences, coupled with Li Guojun's disapproval of their relationship. The father was particularly opposed due to Shuning being 12 years older than Xin Yang and having been divorced with a child from a previous marriage. This familial disapproval only intensified the already strained dynamics. Yet interviews with Xin Yang's relatives and friends revealed that the discord between her and her father was deeply rooted, stretching back many years. When questioned about the origins of Xin Yang's animosity towards her father, her relatives pointed to her early childhood experiences. 21 years prior, shortly after Xin Yang's birth, her mother had suffered from postpartum depression. In a devastating turn of events, Xin Yang's mother fell ill, leaving her unable to care for her daughter. Soon after, her father, Li Guojun, made the heart-wrenching decision to divorce his ailing wife. Embracing a solitary life, he acknowledged his limitations as a single man, ultimately deciding to send Xin Yang to live with her aunt. Xin Yang had only moved back in with her father at the age of 15. Throughout her childhood, she had been deprived of parental affection, with her aunt providing the only semblance of care. Encouraged by her aunt to return to her father, Xin Yang found herself living with Li Guojun, yet their relationship was marked by tension. Li Guojun, an introverted man, struggled with communication, often remaining silent and reserved. This stark contrast in personalities further alienated Xin Yang, who longed for connection and understanding that seemed increasingly out of reach. Once a vibrant and sociable girl, Xin Yang's spirit began to dim after moving in with her father. The transition transformed her from a talkative teen into a shadow of her former self, leaving her withdrawn and hesitant to engage with the world around her. Her bond with her aunt, who had been a mother figure, frayed as Xin Yang ceased all communication with her. The first Lunar New Year spent with her father marked a turning point. Nearly 16, Xin Yang, dressed in new clothes and shoes, found herself overwhelmed with despair. In a desperate moment, she fled upstairs, tears streaming down her face, and attempted to leap from the building. Fortunately, she only sustained minor injuries that required a brief hospital visit. At the time, the incident was largely brushed aside, labeled merely as the impulsive act of a troubled teenager. However, the emotional fallout was profound. Following the incident, Xin Yang withdrew further, dropping out of school and disappearing for long stretches, unable to find solace in her home life. The incident was initially brushed aside, characterized as an impulsive outburst from a troubled teenager. In the wake of this turmoil, Li Xin Yang made the fateful decision to drop out of school. Overwhelmed by her circumstances, she increasingly distanced herself from home, often disappearing for long stretches, searching for solace in the shadows of her chaotic life. The investigation revealed that her suicide attempt and drastic personality shift were rooted in deep, complex issues. By the time she turned 16, Li Xin Yang had started dating. However, Her choice in partners was troubling. Each of her boyfriends was at least a decade older. Once in a relationship, she frequently moved in with them, seldom returning home. To her friends and boyfriends, Shin Yang projected an image of cheerfulness and enthusiasm. Yet, the moment her father was mentioned, a dark cloud would envelop her. Shin Yang recoiled from returning home, deliberately distancing herself from Lee Guojun. But what fueled this intense animosity toward him? Shin Yang guarded her reasons fiercely, refusing to confide in anyone, including her aunt or boyfriends. Strong-willed and resolute, she rarely displayed any vulnerability. What she did reveal was troubling. Her father often drank heavily, physically abused her, and exhibited frightening outbursts. Despite her resentment, Lee Guojun seemed oblivious to the turmoil brewing within his daughter. To him, Shin Yang was merely a rebellious daughter who refused to come home. However, the truth was more layered. Her boyfriend, Shuning, recalled instances when she would return home around 8 or 9 in the morning, skillfully timing her visits to avoid her father. Shuning noted that he had accompanied Shin Yang home on 2 occasions, witnessing her cleaning the house and washing her father's dirty laundry. These actions suggested a lingering care for her father, raising the question, why did she so deliberately evade him? Perhaps only Lee Guojun held the key to unraveling this mystery. By this stage, he had emerged as a prime suspect in the police investigation. Detectives uncovered additional footage from a nearby camera, just a few dozen meters from Guojun's home. At approximately 10 o'clock on February 13th, Guojun was captured on video, walking along the street, his demeanor visibly anxious. The footage revealed him wrapping a bleeding finger on his left hand with tissue. It was clear that this injury was recent, the timestamp indicating it occurred less than an hour after Shin Yang's estimated time of death. The police had noted the wound on Guojun's hand when he initially reported the crime. However, the injury seemed minor. When questioned, Guojun claimed he had hurt himself the day prior while working at the factory. Yet the footage from 10 o'clock that morning showed him actively tending to the wound, suggesting it had been inflicted around that time. Another alarming detail emerged from Guojun's behavior following his daughter's death. Instead of focusing on unearthing the truth, he immediately contacted a funeral service to arrange for Shin Yang's cremation. This alarming haste raised significant suspicions among investigators. Confronted with mounting evidence, including footage showing him returning home on the morning of February 13th and injuring his hand shortly after Shin Yang's death, Guojun ultimately confessed. As the investigation unfolded, mounting evidence began to paint a damning picture against Lee Guojun. Surveillance footage captured him returning home on the morning of February 13th, shortly after Shin Yang's tragic death, with a visible injury to his hand. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, Guojun ultimately confessed to the unthinkable. In a chilling confession, Lee Guojun admitted to murdering his daughter, Lee Shin Yang. He revealed that he was the man in black seen struggling with her at the entrance of their apartment. Guojun recounted the harrowing events of February 13th, a day that would forever alter their lives. As fate would have it, Shin Yang returned home briefly, calculating her visit to coincide with the time her father would typically be at work. Unbeknownst to her, Guojun had taken the day off, waiting for her arrival with dark intentions. Upon entering, Shin Yang immediately sought to leave, her silence echoing her fear. Guojun, sensing her distress, chased after her, gripping her tightly, a struggle that was captured by the watchful lens of the apartment entrance camera. In a desperate attempt to persuade her, he urged her to stay home for the Lunar New Year. Yet Shin Yang was resolute, adamantly insisting on her departure. Her father, fueled by desperation, escalated the confrontation, dragging her back inside the apartment. Once the door was closed, the argument ignited once more, the air thick with tension as Shin Yang's defiance ignited Guojun's rage. In a fit of fury, he seized her by the hair and slapped her repeatedly. But Shin Yang was not one to back down easily. She fought back with equal fervor. It was during this chaotic struggle that she uttered a threat, one that would seal her fate. "If you hit me again," she warned, "I'll accuse you of rape." Guojun later claimed that this statement ignited a fury within him so intense that he completely lost control. In a moment of unspeakable violence, he stabbed his daughter in her bedroom, then dragged her lifeless form from the room. He pulled her through the living room and into the bathroom, leaving her gravely injured but still alive. Rather than summon help, he locked the bathroom door and began to clean the bloodstains in her bedroom, as if erasing the evidence of his monstrous act. In that moment of blind rage, Guo Jun had viewed Xin Yang not as his daughter, but as a troublesome presence, one whose absence he felt would make no difference. This chilling mindset ultimately led him to take her life. After the murder, Guo Jun meticulously staged the scene to appear as if a robbery had taken place. He ransacked drawers and scattered clothing before returning to work, only to come home later that evening, feigning shock at the discovery of his daughter's body. With calculated precision, he reported the crime to the police, masking his cold-heartedness beneath the facade of a grieving father. But why did Xin Yang harbor such deep-seated hatred toward him? When interrogated, Guo Jun evaded the question, attributing their tumultuous relationship to clashing personalities. He described himself as introverted, contrasting himself with his hot-tempered daughter, asserting that their incompatibility led to escalating conflicts, culminating in tragedy. Yet the deeper reasons behind Xin Yang's animosity toward her father remain buried in the silence of Guo Jun. With Xin Yang gone, the only other person who could have illuminated their history, the truth now lies shrouded in mystery, leaving a chilling void where answers should have been. In the aftermath of the murder, reporters sought to unearth the reasons behind Xin Yang's resentment, yearning to understand the young woman's inner turmoil. Yet, accounts from family and friends revealed a stark truth. Xin Yang viewed her father as a taboo subject, refusing to utter his name. Meanwhile, Guo Jun remained tight-lipped about the roots of their conflict. The answers to these questions now linger as a haunting enigma buried alongside Xin Yang's tragic death. In November 2018, the judicial system delivered its verdict, sentencing Guo Jun to death. Li Guojun had steadfastly refused to delve into the origins of their discord. This silence only deepened the mystery, intertwined with the shadows of Xin Yang's untimely demise. The court's decision in November 2018 condemned him to death for his actions. A deep and serious conflict existed between the victim and her father. While the precise nature of their strife remained unconfirmed, Chinese social media users speculated on dark, terrifying possibilities. Allegations that Guo Jun, in a drunken rage, may have sexually assaulted his own daughter. This trauma, they claimed, drove Xin Yang to drop out of school, embrace rebellion, and isolate herself, all while nurturing a deep-seated hatred towards her father. Such extreme behaviors could not simply be attributed to personality differences. Amid the swirling conjecture on Chinese social media, two potential causes emerged: sexual assault and severe physical abuse. Many leaned towards the first, believing it to be the catalyst for Xin Yang's tragic fate. Xin Yang kept her suffering locked away, treating it as an unspoken trauma. She had never been hospitalized for physical injuries, which seemingly ruled out severe abuse. Yet these theories began to circulate, gaining momentum in hushed conversations. Only when her father, Li Guojun, was absent did Xin Yang dare to return home. On the fateful morning of the 13th, her worst fears materialized. Upon discovering her father was there, she instinctively tried to flee. But her escape was thwarted. She was forcibly dragged back into the apartment complex. The initial attack unfolded in her bedroom, where signs of a struggle were evident despite her absence. She had been staying at her boyfriend's home, away from the chaos. Significantly, just days before her murder, Xin Yang declared her intent to report Li Guojun for rape. These circumstances pointed to the horrifying truths whispered on social media, yet without confirmation, they remained mere speculation. One undeniable truth lingered in the shadows. Li Xin Yang craved family warmth. She would secretly return home to help with chores, a stark contrast to the delinquent daughter her father believed her to be. What are your thoughts on the details of this case? We invite you to share your comments below. If you found our video compelling, please like and subscribe for more true crime stories. Thank you, and until next time.